Okay. Wow, I am really loud.
Well, yeah, because you were sitting back, so I turned you up.
Hello. My name is Mike Sanders. What's going on? Hi. This is great.
Hey, friend, welcome to episode we are on 38. This is another one of the 4 that I recorded when I was down in Niceville. And this is one that's up in it's not an attic. It is a second floor office. It feels like an attic in my mind because I used to have an office in what was a built out attic, where it was an attic that was then built out walls, built out roof level, roof line changed. And, for some reason, Jim and Sarah's office upstairs reminds me so much of that office that I had. But anyway, this is the second of the episodes 4 that I recorded when Beth and I were down in Niceville one weekend prepping for the upcoming GY6, Got Your 6 workshop. Now, Mike and Jim, I introduced those guys a little bit in the previous episode. We'll introduce them a little bit more in this one. They and I discussed suicide and the theory that I have after a lot of reading, a lot of talking, a lot of interviewing, a lot of researching, that moral injury is a greater culprit behind suicide than post-traumatic stress. A lot of times we just assume that it's post-traumatic stress because we're more familiar with post-traumatic stress. But in this episode, we're going to talk a little bit about why I think it might be moral injury, and we'll define what moral injury is as the bigger culprit. Now, interestingly enough, right now, it's a Saturday morning while I'm recording this intro. The episode, the core content was recorded probably 3 weeks ago when we were out of town. So I'm sitting down finally to record the intro and then roll this one out. Tonight, Beth and I are going to our friends Leon and Lisa's. So they are both former military and or first responders and or have some positions of influence and rank in those areas and really engaged, in fact, have some chaplaincy and all of that behind them. Lisa sends over a link this morning on this little text thread that we have with, the 4 of us with our friends. And it says something like this. This is from a government site, the National Library of Medicine, National Center for Biotechnology Information. I will put the link down in the show notes to this as well. So she sends this over, has no idea that I'm recording this right now. Sends this over. I received it on that text thread 5 to 10 minutes ago. Here's the title of the article. Moral injury is independently associated with suicidal ideation and suicide attempt in high stress, service-oriented occupations. Now, here's the abstract. I'm going to read a couple sentences. The study explores the link between moral injury and suicidal thoughts and behaviors among U.S. military veterans, healthcare workers, and first responders. Specifically, it investigates the risk associated with moral injury that is not attributable to common mental health issues. And then it just goes on. You can read it. It talks about suicide being a significant public health concern in the U.S., death by suicide particularly concerning among those in high-stress, service-oriented occupations like military veterans, healthcare workers, and first responders, the rate being much higher than non-veteran adults. And then it continues. I'll put the link again. You can go and read it. Now, here's why it stands out. In the GY6 workshop, we've been doing the workshops, kind of rolling them out this year. 2026 is kind of the year we're launching and kind of rolling that thing out. And so we've got workshops we've done Birmingham, we've got Talladega, Niceville, back to Talladega, up to Huntsville, back down to Niceville, talking with some other areas right now to roll it. If you go to lesson number 5, which is the beginning of part 3 of the book. So part 1 is about total health. Part 2 is about post-traumatic stress. Part 3 is about moral injury. At the end of lesson 5, we actually state that it's my contention that the suicide rate is driven by moral injury, not PTSD. So I thought the guys that have some experience, Mike trains guys in total wholeness. He prepares literally Green Berets, has done this with Navy SEALs to go out, execute the mission, and then come back and recover. Jim was a Air Force squadron commander, and most recently has been training pilots. Now is pivoting to post-military. So I thought let me just talk with some guys that are in that space, not scientifically. Let's just kind of anecdotally have the conversation and discuss what you've seen. What do you think? And so here's that conversation recorded upstairs in Jim and Sarah's office in Niceville. Okay, I got a topic that I think I want to hit. Now, just by way of like setting it up, we were here all weekend because we're planning out the GY6, Got Your 6 workshop that's going to come up on May the 9th, 2026. That's a Saturday here in Niceville. I think we're going to host that at Manna Church. And then also D1, you're going to do some strength and conditioning training. That's Mike Sanders. You can hear Mike there. And we are going to have, who else is Serve Ministries? Michael Belton's going to be there. Several others. So I don't want to start listing because then we leave somebody out.
Manna Church.
Yeah, so we'll just stop. We already said them. It's at Man. So we'll just stop right there.
Okay.
But in the planning of that, you and I were going through, because we're tag team teaching that at this event. Mm-hmm. And we were looking at the different points. Okay, I'm going to teach that. You're going to teach this. We're going to teach, because by the way, just so you know, you're listening, that is a curriculum that you can go watch the video course now. Shot that. You can get the slides. You can teach it on your own. You can get the workbook. We called it the field guide, the GY6 field guide. You can get all those tools are available there, and you can go through it and do it just in the same way that Mike and I are going to do it, or you can watch the video. So that's kind of the commercial. All the links for that are in the show notes. We got to this one point that I believe is in lesson number 5, which is in part 3 of the workbook. Part 3 is where we're talking about moral injury. Mm-hmm. We'll define it in a minute. Mm-hmm. And you said, oh, that's so true right there.
Yeah.
And the point was something like more suicides result from moral injury than PTSD.
Yes.
So let's talk a little bit about that. Let's don't dodge suicide. In fact, we're going to talk openly about it. So if you're driving along in the car listening to this, you might want to just consider who's with you. If you got your headphones on, all right, great. Maybe don't drive with the headphones on. But let's talk a little bit about PTSD, moral injury, suicide.
Okay.
All right. Here's what PTSD is, very succinctly. And Jim, you've been in combat situations, right?
Yeah, sure have. Yeah.
And so you could probably give me some examples on some of this. And by the way, when I'm not trying to diagnose, prescribe, or treat, so I'm using the term D on PTSD, disorder. And there's lots of debate. Should we use disorder or not? Because it is a natural response, God-given, to external stimuli that are elevated. Anytime you endure an event that marks you, positively or negatively, all the data, the sensory data, so what you see, hear, what you feel, what you even taste in some instances, touch, the textures, all of that is stamped in your subconscious and stored in your body. And in the future, when you come across the same scenario again, the same sight, sounds, textures, all that data rushes back to the way your brain's wired, and you're taken back to the moment. Now, this happens on positive events. So it's why you might hear a certain song and then it just moves you, or, man, do you remember the song? Like, what song did you and your daughter dance to at the wedding?
It was a Stephen Curtis Chapman, Cinderella.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
I bet when you hear Cinderella from now on,
Well, I mean, I pulled that song when the girls were little, and my daughter was a dancer.
And
that was her chosen activity. And I would listen to it deployed, and it would make me think of her and cry.
yeah.
And so, of course, when it was time to pick a father-daughter dance song, she presented that to me as one of the options, and she asked me my opinion, and it was a no-brainer.
That was it. Okay, that's my point.
Yeah.
Like, you just nailed it. Like, the song would instantly, while you're deployed, take you there. That's why certain weather shifts and seasons can take you somewhere. Well, it does this with negative or traumatic situations too. It comes back, and you're designed by God like this. It's why some of the guys you train, Mike, will say, some of the SEALs and Green Berets will say, I didn't know what I was going to do. Mm-hmm. I wasn't even thinking about it, but the training just kicked in.
Yep.
And then all of a sudden, just boom, 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 boom.
Yep.
But that's why. It's because it's not just the reps. It's like you're designed by God for all this to be stamped and stored. So post-traumatic stress is a response in that way to traumatic experiences of the past. Mm-hmm. So give me some actual tangible ones that in the military that you guys...
Yeah. So first of all, as an aviator, I don't want to measure up against what some of the ground component guys have seen or done, but there's still plenty there. Okay. So, and I'd like to stress that the trauma piece is really what we're talking about here.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, it is.
The military doesn't hold the market down on that.
Well, that's in the American Psychiatric Association's definition.
Yes.
It says post-traumatic stress could cause by, I think war and combat is like 6th or 7th on the list. And then they have
Right.
this little word that says, and things such as these.
Right. And so here's what I'll say. So you mentioned earlier about the training piece. I think what the military does really good is they take their history and they include that in their training plans so that when a soldier is in that situation, they've already game planned it in their head.
Yeah.
Right. So that when it happens, even though they've never experienced it before, they've prepared for it and their body does take over.
Yeah.
And they just get so good at what they do that it becomes automatic. So my example of this is in Afghanistan, we were doing an airdrop mission really low to the ground. And in the worst possible moment, we got shot at. And it was really, really scary about 40 minutes after it happened. But while it was going on, we just did our job. And famously, like, we got up to altitude when we were safe again. And my co-pilot, he had to cuss. So we were just quiet for about 5 minutes, and he broke the tension by going, "Mother effer." And that was it. And that was like permission for all of us to dump that emotion. But
It didn't happen while you guys were...
nope, not at all. In fact, the only thing I said, so of course, just to tell the story really quickly, the loadmaster spotted the engagement first, and all he said was, "Guys, they're shooting at us." With
said it
that
like
tone,
that?
said it just like that. And I said, "Okay, how about a clock position?" Asking him to tell me where it was coming from.
And you said it like that.
Said it just like that. Okay. And I was almost sarcastic. It was like, "Hey, you did that wrong. Like, you're supposed to say it this way." And I go, "Okay, how about a clock position?" And that was permission for him to ramp up his energy. So he starts screaming, "Oh, AAA coming at us from 5 o'clock, from 2 firing position," blah, blah. He's giving me tons of information. Right. And so we sprung into action. I'm immediately doing all the evasive maneuvers that we've trained for. And the only way that I could avoid this was to turn around in this valley and actually go back the way we came from. And so the engagement started on my co-pilot side of the airplane, but when we turned around, now it's on my side. All right, now this guy is completely panicked because he can't see anything. So he starts screaming instructions at me. And he's yelling at me to descend and accelerate to try and get out of the engagement zone as fast as possible. But I can see where these rounds are coming from because it's on my side now. Right. And the rounds are going below us. I'm just watching tracers go below us, and he's telling me to descend and accelerate, which would have been the worst possible thing. And so without thinking, I reached over with my right hand and I grabbed his shoulder and I go, I got it. And then I put my hand back on the throttles and I went back to doing my job, right? That tactile, like me actually touching him and him hearing my voice, he was able to take that full panic and he was able to be quiet.
Well, because he trusted you too and
did.
knew that you were on it.
Yes, all he wanted was some kind of reassurance that I had it. All right, so we escaped the engagement. We didn't get hit. We climb out of the valley, go back up to altitude in order to fly home, and then all the emotions come through. And that's when he cussed, and we all had our moment. So the hard part about it is you have the whole time to think about it when you get back to base, and then that one mission affected the rest of our deployment. All of a sudden, we're risk averse. And we all signed up to be there to do a job. You start thinking about your family and thinking about the what ifs. And I think when you're confronted with one of those situations and you're allowed for all the emotions to spool up, it's going to leave a lasting impact that will change the way you do business for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
So when we talk about the trauma piece, now say you have a soldier that gets exposed to little things like that multiple times in a deployment, almost every day over time, right? How much of an impact do you think that's going to have on the rest of their life?
Well, and that's where you get into the idea. Sometimes people say complex PTSD. So
Right.
what you went through on that, like, and let's just pull that one instance out as if that's the only instance.
Yeah, which it's not.
It's
but
not. But
yeah,
let's
it's a
just
good
for
example.
this. So that's the equivalent of, let's just call it you getting handed. We were in your shed today, Mike. What was the biggest dumbbell you had?
75 pounds.
Okay, that's the 75 dumbbell. So I give
Yeah,
you
that
a
one's
70.
mine. He lets me use that one when I come over.
Yes, you're doing curls with that.
That's right.
So I just gave you
Finger curls.
So that one event is here's a 75-pound dumbbell. So it's like a big T type trauma, relative. So you got another guy that's out there getting into little things every day, and he may be getting. What you got? Any 5-pounders in there, Mike?
I do.
Okay, 2.5-pounders.
I think we do. I think we have 2.5.
All right, so we keep getting these guys little 2.5-pounders, 5-pounder, 2.5, 2.5, 2.5, 2.5.
And then you tell them to do 1,000 reps with it.
Yeah, and keep carrying what you've got. I mean, it's almost easier to carry the 75-pounder than all the other, and it's just, over time, it's just the layering and the layering and the layering. So post-traumatic stress becomes reading present situations, as you guys were doing at every other maneuver afterwards, every other mission, in light of past experience. And we all do it. Moral injury is a little different. Actually, it's radically different.
Well, let me say one other thing, too, before you move on. I think what we in life do poorly is plan for contingencies where we're going to get exposed to that stuff.
Oh, because y'all had contingencies. Yeah.
In the military, we do. I think when you just talk about men in general, does anybody sit around and go, I'm going to get these paper cuts for my whole life? How am I going to deal with that cumulatively over time? Does anybody do that?
Yeah. I mean,
we get warned that marriage is hard and that raising kids is difficult and the devil's going to constantly pick at you. But is there a strategy long term to deal with those paper cuts?
Right. So this is what I was talking to you, Andy, earlier about, is that we are headed in two directions in our lives. We're either headed into a compounding chaotic situation, or we're coming into a compounding order situation.
I wrote it down.
Yeah. So the chaotic is these little paper cuts of wounds that happen to us mentally, physically, spiritually over time, and they start adding up. If I don't have a contingency plan, if I don't have a way to mitigate, to take care of the problems that are happening to me, they will compound to a place where it becomes extremely chaotic and the recovery process is much harder. On the other hand, what Jesus wants for us is he wants us to have freedom. So this idea then that if I bring him and other people into my life that can help me overcome these little paper cuts and the things that happen over time, then those get reversed and it becomes compounding order. That is where truth is found. That's where freedom is found. It's found in order. It's not found in chaos.
Okay, hang on to that, because I think in a minute I'll give you a place to find order. Okay, so now pivot to moral injury. Okay, moral injury is a response. Now, it happened because of externals. So it happens because of real events, usually. But it is something internal. So post-traumatic stress is going to occur. It's going to be a reaction to external triggers. So let's just use that word. It's a good word, even though people
Overuse it.
yeah, overuse it on everything on Facebook. Oh, that traumatized me. What? Traumatized? Oh, somebody had a different opinion.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, my goodness. Oh, get the wambulance on the way. But it is valid. Things that trigger you. Again, those sights, sounds, smells. Moral injury is a little bit different. It's a response to internals. So think about it like this. You're raised your entire life. What's right? What's wrong? You've got this moral compass. C.S. Lewis had said something like this. You go anywhere on the planet and all the people have basically the same rules. You don't kill. You don't steal. He even said that thieves suspend the rules because they'll steal and then they'll get mad at each other about not like giving each other their fair share after they've stolen. So they're back to
honor
like
among thieves. Yeah.
Yes, there is none. That's what it's always, hey, men look out for women and children. Like that's always so you grow up and and you think as long as this is when you're small, do not do the wrong thing, and as long as I am sure that I do the right thing, because James says to the one who knows to do good and doesn't do it, it's sin, right? So you could sin by acts of commission, wrongs you commit, or sins of omission, good things you omit, you leave out. We think it's all black and white, and then you grow up and you realize, man, life exists in so many different shades of gray. So you have these layers of things like survivor's guilt or accidents that get caused, or sometimes something's done to you and you're not guilty. For instance, every victim of rape or abuse that I've ever talked to felt guilt.
Almost responsible.
Yeah, but it's not there. You go, no, you're the victim. And in the same way, you can explain the story behind PTSD. You can explain and share the story behind moral injury, but you can't talk your way out of trauma. Like you can nail down the story, but so it creates this rupture. Moral injury does between what your conscience is telling you and then what you did. Another classic example. You raised your whole life not to kill, and then every police officer, every service member that I know can tell you the first time they fired the weapon or unloaded the plane's ammo, and again, you can say, wait, they had to because they were saving lives. And you go, yes. And also it's multi-layered and can create this internal, and that leads to moral injury. Make sense?
Yep.
Okay, talk about it a little bit, Mike.
Yeah, so this idea of moral injury, I think, comes from the reality, or the reality that we were taught that the world is a certain way. So, in other words, people don't shoot at me. People don't beat the heck out of their wives and their kids, and those kinds of things. And then we end up going into, as a police officer, or to use Jim's example, people don't shoot at each other in airplanes. Like when I fly in an airplane, don't get shot at. Thank goodness.
Yes, thank goodness.
Right? So this idea then is that, wait a minute, hold on. So you're telling me that a human being is doing the exact thing that I was always taught throughout my life that is not morally how I'm supposed to handle the situation. But the reality is we do have an enemy. That enemy is pulling people in the wrong direction, which gets back to our other conversation. But that means then that if I am a good man and I get in the process of having to be the person that is engaging in that, wait a minute, this is not the way the world's supposed to be.
Yeah, you're making the morally ambiguous decision.
That's exactly right.
And you have to for good reason sometimes.
That's right.
And then also it's layered. Sometimes you intentionally make a bad decision.
Yes.
And then sometimes it's done to you.
That's right. And now I'm in a chaotic environment, and I end up having to make a decision, and I may have to take someone's life. But the thing is that person was a police officer, for example. Don't do that. Put down the gun. Stop what you're doing. And they don't. And a decision has to be made. The moral piece is that there's a wound to your soul.
No, it's to your spirit, I think.
It's and to your okay. You're right.
So
You're right. Okay.
They all no. The disclaimer is interdependent realization.
Yep.
So everything affects everything.
Yep.
But if you have like a traumatic brain injury, we were talking about that earlier with some of the guys that you've worked with.
Yep.
Traumatic brain injury. That is a physical injury.
That's right.
To the brain.
Yep.
It affects how they see, interact,
Yep.
the field of vision. Each person differently.
Yep.
A post-traumatic stress, primarily injury to the soul.
That's right. You're
your
right.
emotions, personality.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Moral injury still affects the soul, primarily
Second order effects.
injury to the because everything's connected.
Right.
Primarily an injury to the spirit.
That's right. Yep.
Here's what I've seen. Not as a professional counselor, because I'm not one.
Thank goodness.
I would be horrible at it. Would be.
I'm sleeping with one. Does that help?
It hasn't helped you.
Yeah, that's
but
true.
We're hoping for the best.
She's way smarter than me, too.
That's right.
Yes. My experience, anecdotally, like from talking to people, is it seems that the symptoms of moral injury, so like the fight, flight, freeze, fawn, which we're not going to define all those here, they tend to lessen over time.
Yes.
So
If you deal with them.
Yeah, if you will. So, for instance, I imagine while you're on mission, you're flying an airplane, and for a while you feel like, oh, we're going to get shot at. When you got back over stateside, you probably looked out the window the first couple times, and then after a while, it's like you're going up now, not even thinking about it's a possibility.
Yes, that's true.
And I'm being radically simplistic.
Yeah, and maybe that's not the best example, but I mean, I'll put it this way. I think there's an effort on men's part to ignore it.
Well, you've got to deal with it, but I do think over time the symptoms of it get less.
If you actually do deal with it.
Yeah.
But some men don't. That's like right. We're told just rub some dirt on it, and that's not the right thing to do with the wound, and
Yeah. Okay. So unattended to hurts don't get healed.
It gets way worse.
But over time, if you address it, those get better. Here's the deal with moral injury. I think moral injury over time, especially if you don't deal with it, the symptoms of moral injury, which are guilt and shame, that's what it is.
True.
They get way worse. So the flight,
Yes.
fright, freeze, fawn, the hypervigilance of post-traumatic stress, over time that lessens moral injury, the guilt and shame. The guilt meaning I did something that's morally ambiguous. The shame, oh, I am. And that's when you take it on as an identity, who you are. I am morally ambiguous. That gets worse. And when you look at the stats, I'll tell you what some of them are in a second. The suicide rate starts peaking when guys get in their 50s. Right about the time they've raised their kids, they've offloaded some responsibility. And that seems to be when they start tapping out.
Like when they have time to focus a little bit more on themselves.
Or they have to.
Right.
Post-traumatic stress, you can fight, flight, get away from it. Moral injury, you know that phrase, wherever you go, there you are.
Yeah.
So guilt, shame goes with you wherever you go. You can't, you can't, if you get triggered on the 4th of July when there are fireworks shooting off everywhere, you can create protocol against that.
Put your head down.
You could go camping. You can play loud music. You can just
Yeah.
go to bed early. You can get away from town. You could whatever. Like you can get away from it. Moral injury, you can't get away from you.
Yeah, and I also think that moral injury is set up in a way that it attacks. Jim and I talk a lot about that. Jesus taught us how to be servants. That life was actually found in being a true servant. So he washed his disciples' feet, and he did that to show them that, hey guys, I just want you to know I'm washing your feet. I created the universe, which means I created you, and I want you to understand that I'm washing your feet. That means that he's teaching them that all life then is about serving other people. So when what's really hard for our our military and for our first responders and all of them, they usually get into this because they want to serve. So the pain then, that the injury comes from that moral piece, and then and when they have kids, and we talked about when they start getting older, if they don't get some sort of healing, the research shows if they don't get some sort of healing from what they've seen, been a part of, and all that, it can actually get worse over time, and it may actually produce worse feelings as time goes on. Now I'm taking kids out of the situation. I'm taking my busyness out. There's a way that men are really good at just kind of like getting busy and ignoring themselves. And Jim and I talk about it. Or the whole board talks about it at Junto when we do infill. Guys, we're going out in the woods, and we want you to turn off your phones. We want you to be quiet, and some of you are going to be really uncomfortable.
And you need to be.
Yes,
Yeah,
and you
stir
need
crazy.
to be. And the reason why they're uncomfortable is because they don't like that silence, because now they are in their own minds and there's silence there. So this idea then, as people get older, that moral injury can actually get worse because of the silence, because you're actually, in a way, facing those challenges because of the quiet.
Well, it's understanding your identity too. So when it comes to service, I think the mission is the coping mechanism for so long. Mm-hmm. And so you talk about when you get older, why they have so much trouble. It's because you've taken their coping mechanism away. When they're no longer in service, they can compartmentalize all the garbage because they have to be mission effective.
Like when you guys were in the plane, for instance.
Correct.
Compartmentalize the gun, fire coming in. Yeah.
Right. And so as soon as those men and women retire, and they no longer have that part of what they perceive to be their identity, now they have to confront the trauma, and they don't have an outlet. They've not learned how to do it. So that's why I asked the question earlier, when you get all those paper cuts, what's the strategy for dealing with that over time when you lose the thing that helps you to kind of stuff it down? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And I in the military especially, we are trained to be miserable, meaning a guy will get a 6-month deployment. It'll pop up.
That's really good.
And their attitude is, well, at least it's not a year. That doesn't mean the 6-month deployment doesn't suck. That's just how they cope with it, right? So I mentioned earlier that I have not experienced the same things that the ground component has experienced. So that's my way of saying, hey, all the things I go through, at least I'm not on the ground.
Well, yeah, you're doing what a lot of people do. They're minimizing their own.
Exactly.
Which the only weight you can carry is the weight that you have. Like that's
Right.
the one you got to deal with.
So now fast forward to what you were saying. Now they're in their 50s.
Right.
And they're out of service, and they don't have the brotherhood. They don't have the camaraderie to help suppress the emotions that they're feeling about whatever it is that they've experienced. They don't have the purpose because, hey, Mike mentioned it, we're trained to be servants. We're trained to do something that is bigger than ourselves.
Well, guys sign up for that.
Exactly. No, it's not that they sign up for it. It's a drug to them. It is, guys. I'm telling you.
I've been around it. Yep.
People that are in the service, the mission is a drug because it's bigger than they are.
Yeah.
And everybody wants to feel that in one way or another.
Well, you're created by God for it. Like we were created for purpose and mission. And
That's why we're attracted to being fathers. You know, that's why every man is so proud of having a son that they can impart wisdom on, right? That's bigger than me, right? And so if you take that thing away, that thing that's bigger than they are, well, now I got to deal with all the garbage. So how do I do it? And if you've not been trained how to do it, it's hard.
yeah.
And I'm going to interrupt really quickly. So Jim is a former aviator in the Air Force. When Jim starts talking about it being a servant, I'm sitting across the table from Jim. When he started talking about that, he broke out in goose pimples.
Oh, I didn't even notice.
I did. So that's what we're talking about. That's the level of depth that is in these guys when we talk about this idea of being a servant.
You meant goosebumps. Goose pimples.
What I say?
Goose pimples.
Okay, shiver balls. How's that?
Sure, yeah, whatever. Hey, let me give you some stats, and then let's talk about how you heal this. So here's how bad it is. Let me give you the military stats using round numbers, and then I want us to tell the story with the firefighters briefly. We don't have to locate them geographically. You can just tell the story because I think the stats probably very similar. So the Department of War, when it was the Department of Defense, ran a study several years ago, looking back, it was a 20-year look back at the death rates from the 20-year period, 2000 to 2020. And some of the data showed that the suicide rate, in the first decade, about midpoint, was around 22 a day. It seems to have peaked there. That's where the number is that people commonly say, 22 a day. Right now, a recent report says that it's about 17.6 per day. Still way too high.
Agreed.
Absolutely too high for military. Now, those are only suicides that can be accounted for as actual verifiable suicide. So it's not going to include suicide by cop. It's not going to include an intentional overdose. It's not going to include wrecking my car, those sorts of things. It is actual, verifiable, without a shadow of a doubt. You can prove it was suicide. Okay, those are the numbers. Here's what it is when you accumulate all of them. And for context, we had just over 7,000, again, not to minimize, I'm just using round numbers so you can remember, 7,000 killed in action during that 20-year period. So 7,000 killed in action. Deaths of self-inflicted injury while serving during that 20-year period was right at 5,500, meaning that's a Department of Defense, now Department of War, euphemism for took their own life, suicide, 5,500 while serving, meaning you're almost as likely to take your own life while serving as you are to die at the hands of an enemy combatant. Make sense? Here's where it gets even testier is during that 20-year period of veterans. So meaning no longer serving. 130,000 suicides during that 20-year period. So again, let me just give you the numbers. 5,500 self-inflicted injury while serving, 130,000 no longer serving. Killed in action, 7,000. That's a lot. And significantly higher than the general populace in America. You were telling me about the firefighter story where you gave some data and said the leading cause of death among firefighters was two things. It was
Cancer and heart attack.
okay. And then you're out walking along the street after this conference and three guys call you over there. Hey, Mike, come, can we buy you a drink?
Yep.
And fill it in.
Yeah, so we were at a conference and we were doing human performance talk, teaching people how to, firefighters and first responders, how to take care of themselves physically, mentally, spiritually, and so forth. And we had a thing that we said at that point that the research shows that cancer and heart attack are the leading causes of death in the fire department. Anyway, so we went and that was correct. We went and started walking around and so forth afterwards. And we're walking in Indianapolis, me and this other guy who's a former Navy SEAL. And as we're walking down the street, we hear, and he spoke as well. And as we were walking down the street, we heard three or four firefighters yelling at us from a restaurant that was on the street.
Like an outdoor restaurant.
Outdoor restaurant.
Porch area.
Yep. And so he's like, hey guys, or they said, hey guys, come over and have a drink with us. So we sat down with them. And one of the guys that I still remember very well looked like he could break me in half. The guy was probably 65 years old. He was actually retired, just newly retired, and had a handlebar mustache, just a specimen still. And he said, you guys brought up that the heart attack and cancer are the lead reasons for death in the fire department. He goes, I'm not sure if that's true in my department. And then he looked over at his buddy and said, what about you? And he goes, yeah, I don't know if it's true in my department anymore or either. And I said, well, then what would it be? And he said, suicide. So there's something there that we need to look at, and I believe it comes back to this idea of moral injury. So our firefighters, our police officers, and our military see the absolute worst that humanity can handle, or can rather present to the world. And when they present to the world, they're bringing evil. They're choosing evil. They're bringing it in, and it does affect other people. So our firefighters then, and our first responders, our police officers are in that world, and they've been taught, they've grown up differently, that that's not the way the world is. And now suddenly find out, man, there's actually people doing these kinds of things. And then they're involved in that process. That then rocks their worldview. And when I have a worldview, my worldview then changes the way that I make decisions and see the world around me. And then that can cause a moral injury. When I have a moral injury, it can cause issues in the being that is human.
Or moral injuries.
Yeah.
Here's what the data says from secular psychologists and counselors, sacred psychologists and counselors, chaplains. They say the way you heal moral injury is that the person who is injured, who is hurt, needs to receive absolution or forgiveness from someone whom they believe has the authority to forgive them. So it could be a peer, somebody they served with, flew with, maybe even somebody that was not necessarily with them, but was in a similar situation. It could be a religious leader, so pastor, rabbi, priest, chaplain. It could be someone else whom they believe has the authority or the spiritual clout to grant absolution to them. And at that point, it's almost like the healing process becomes instant. The problem is people don't want to talk about it because of the guilt and shame that keep you in the dark. So you've got to get it into the light.
Or the culture.
Or the culture. But yeah, you've got to get it out there, though, to where people can heal it together, because it happens it's like 1 John 1:7. If we walk into the light as he is in the light, then the blood of Jesus cleanses us. It's like James says, James 5, you confess the sin, and he makes no indication as to whether it was sin you did, sin that was done to you, or just the clutter of sin in the world. If we confess it, or he says to confess it to one another so that you can be not forgiven, but be healed.
I know that's the way to approach the problem, but it is not that simple.
No.
Well,
Because-
I'm being very simplistic.
Well, that's why I bring up culture.
Yeah.
Because in the military, it's trained into us very early that any mental health issues will result in a pulling of your security clearance, and now you are no longer allowed to do your job.
And maybe your firearm.
Well, that's right. You can't deploy. And so Jim is right. I'll let you go.
Yeah. No, I was saying, you go back to that purpose piece. Every man is there and woman is there because they're attracted to that higher level service.
Yeah.
And so we're taught very early, hey, if you talk about this stuff, you're going to have to go see the psych, and the psych is going to ground you.
Yeah. But to go, I hope I'm not derailing
No, go
this.
ahead.
And if I am, tell me. But this goes back to this idea of forgiveness. How many times do we see in the Bible where God tells us, forgive one another, forgive one another, forgive one another? So if Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life, then why would he tell us to forgive each other? There's probably something there then that ends up when we're able to find forgiveness, we are actually released from something that is causing death. If we that we go back to. So again, his truth, one of his truths is you need to love one another and forgive each other, even love your enemies. Think about what that means. Mm-hmm. That means then that, yeah, there's bad people in the world. Those are awful people. And unfortunately, you're in a world in which you're getting pulled into. But the reality is you still have to love. What he's getting at is you've got to still remember and love them, even your enemies, pray for them, and find forgiveness, because something seems to be shifting in us and changes. So really quickly, Saul, before he was Paul, his name was Saul. He's on the road to Emmaus, and something crazy happens. And we call this the conversion of Saul to Paul. He becomes the greatest.
The road to Damascus?
What did I say?
Emmaus.
Oh, sorry, Damascus. And so something happens. something happens to Paul in that process. If you think about it, what he ends up doing is Jesus comes to him and says, I'm calling you, Saul. I'm calling you to do this. And we know that Saul was doing awful, awful things. People were dying because of the decisions and the work that he was doing. And then suddenly something happens and he changes. Something probably happened to him all the way down to the epigenetic level. His genes started expressing themselves differently. What's interesting is that Jesus comes to him and says, what are you doing? What are you doing? You need to be different. There was probably a healing, and in that process, he realizes, I've been forgiven.
Well,
right?
Well, but Jesus sent a guy to go in that story, intercept Saul.
Yes.
And the guy even said, "Isn't this the one that's?" yes, it's him. Go.
That's
yes,
him.
that's him. Yeah, you nailed it. Go. So there's something about the expression of it.
Well, you talked about the absolution piece too. I think one of the most healthy things we can do as service members or first responders is to create a culture where you can talk to the people you serve with. Because if you're going through some stuff and you're able to say it out loud and your peers go, yeah, me too.
Yeah, the stigma is gone.
The stigma is completely gone. And
it's like touching the guy. Like you touch that guy.
Yep.
It's like, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. And so I think we need to change the culture first, that it's okay to verbalize these things that we're going through, and you're not at risk of losing your job, right? And I would just encourage everybody that's working out there to do that, to allow your peers to talk about their feelings and express it, and for you guys to bond over that. It'll actually make you more mission effective too.
Yeah,
if you understand that everybody's going through the same thing. Mike, I've shared many times the reason I love our ministry is Junto Tribe Ministry is because I can walk in the shed where we meet and I know I'm not alone.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So hear me. If you're going through this, if you're going through moral injury, say it out loud to somebody who understands you. And that's part of the absolution piece.
Yeah. Yeah. You've got to, you can't hold it. Let me end with this piece. What's it called on the dive in? Rip
the entry.
Rip the entry. Yeah. So Jim just told you what to do if you're going through it. Here, let me give you the other side. If you see somebody that you think is going through it, just call them out on it graciously, kindly, and if you think that they're at the point of being suicidal, ask them. Now you can't be a jerk when you do it, and you can't put guilt and shame on top of it when you do it. Ask them about it, but don't say something like, "Hey, are you thinking about hurting yourself?" Because they could legitimately tell you, "No, I'm not," and not be lying, because they're not thinking about hurting themselves. They may be thinking about ending it. So ask them, "Hey, are you considering killing yourself?" Be that clear. And if they push back, and they won't, if they know you love them, but if they push back, say, "Man, I would rather have a conversation that's awkward and tough right now than something happen and you not know that I was here." Or you might want to say, "I'd rather have a conversation with you than later on a conversation about you, just wondering what could I have done differently." Suicide is a very permanent resolution to problems that seem huge, but are actually temporary. And when it occurs, there are always people left behind who are now greeted with handling all sorts of issues that they didn't plan on handling. They're handling them under duress, and they're handling them thinking, "Oh, if I would have known, I would have stepped in. If I would have known." And so if you think that someone close to you is in that space, say something. Years ago, I was going through a very difficult time, and I don't know what I said or did in the moment, but there were some guys that reached out to me and said, "Where are you right now?" And I was on a text thread with them, and I told them. And one of them said, "I'm coming to you right now." And when he got there, he asked me very serious, point blank questions. I didn't think less of him. I kind of felt seen and felt like, oh, you see? You got anything to add?
Yeah, I'm not alone. That's how you feel,
Let's
right?
back to it. Yeah, I'm not. So let's land the plane on that one. I don't ever really use that phrase.
I appreciate you including me in your metaphors.
It's for you. Got a metaphor, Mike?
Yeah, we need to
Stack the weight.
We need to rip the plane on.
No, that's
Oh.
No, you're mixing
not,
them up.
Okay.
that doesn't work.
In fact, that's now you're
This-
now I'm experiencing trauma again.
Am I compounding the chaos?
Yeah, a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. My prayers, the Lord bless you, keep you, be gracious, shine his face of favor on you. If you are struggling, not alone. I'm not minimizing what you're going through. It may absolutely be tough and weighty, and you're not alone.
You're not alone.
If you see somebody going through, let them know. Because everyone else may think they've got it together, or everyone else may think somebody else is going to say it. Let them know they're not alone.
Can I say one more thing?
Yeah. And get back out of the water.
Finally, be strong in the Lord and in his mighty power. Put on the full armor of God so that you can take a stand against the devil's schemes. For our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of this dark world, and against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms. That's Ephesians, my wife's favorite verse, Ephesians 6:10 through whatever. But that's the idea, is that we are being attacked and we have to be strong in the Lord. And you got to find people that are willing to shoulder that burden with you and push through.
Amen.